So listen guys, it's a great day. So I am outside doing my video. I know it's shade on this side and light on this side. I don't feel like putting up fancy backgrounds today, trying to figure out my lighting today. This is what we got, au naturel, right? And we're talking about test optional today. Are colleges really test optional? Are they really test optional? And what is test optional? Hello Underdogs, it's your host Nicole Renee of College Planning for Underdogs, and today I want to talk about test optional. What is test optional? And so for those of you who are old heads that went to school back in the day, or maybe 3 or 4 years ago, most colleges, four-year college particularly, want you to have SAT and ACT scores to be able to apply to their schools. But since the pandemic, a number of schools have gone test optional, meaning that they do not require test scores to apply to their schools. Now, a lot of people think that this is something that is new, but there are a number of schools that were test optional pre-pandemic. And so there is a website that you can go to called fairtest.org, and you can look down in the description box for the link that actually has a running list of colleges that have been test optional for quite some time. And you can rearrange that list by alphabetical order by school name and state. And then when you start to dig and do some research, you can actually see how far back schools have been test optional. However, the main reason why I want to do this video is because sometimes test optional is not quite test optional, right? I don't know why people say that it's test optional and it's not. So when a school says that they are test optional, what that means is that you do not have to submit test scores, whether they're SAT or whether they're ACT. And we'll go into the differences between ACT and SAT in another video, because that is a whole nother video. But they do not require test scores for you to be able to apply to that particular school. So if you're not going to submit test scores, then pretty much all you have to be able to submit is an application, some essays, your resume, and some other items. So if you are a student that is choosing not to submit those test scores, then you really need to do some extra things to your application to really, beef it up and raise your profile and make you stand out a little bit more. So when some colleges say that they're test optional, it may mean that instead of you submitting test scores, that you actually have to submit an essay or some type of writing supplement in place of the test. So you guys need to make sure that you check the guidelines for each school that says that they're test optional to see if there's something that you do have to put in its place. Some of them may ask for a graded writing sample that you have done for a class for a teacher before. And so that may be what you have to submit. Now, some schools will say that you don't have to submit test scores to get into the school. However, there's a little catch, because some schools may allow you to apply to their school without test scores. But if you want to get any additional scholarships that they call merit scholarships that are based off of your grades, GPA, test scores, then you do need to submit test scores to be able to be eligible for some of those scholarships. I don't think that's fair, but that's what some people do. Now, there are some schools that don't require that you do submit the SAT scores for a scholarship. However, of course, there's always a catch. You can still submit your test scores, and if you do well, then instead of them giving you $2,000 for a merit scholarship, they may give you $3,000 or $4,000 depending on what your score is. But these things aren't really written down. They're just some things that you have to know. So one of the things that you might want to do is reach out to your admissions counselor and find out, if you can't find it on the website, exactly what the rules are for test optional. Now, I'm going to give some underdog tips about test optional, because there are also some other factors that go into that entire process. All right. So are you ready for those tips? All right. So in order for me to give you guys those underdog tips, I got to go backwards a little bit. So when you are taking the SAT or the ACT, I know back in the day you actually had to write down names of schools that you wanted to submit your test scores to. Okay. And so with that, you had to put those names down on your SAT or ACT application as you are taking the test or right after you take the test. And then sometimes you do have a couple of weeks to go back in and delete those schools from your account to not send them. So if you are paying for the SAT, then you normally have about 4 weeks to send your test scores to schools that you want to have your scores. And then after that 4 weeks, or if you go over and you have a certain number of schools that you can send it to. Okay, I'm not going to say the number because College Board does an update every summer and I don't want it to be correct. I'll put the correct information down in the description box. But if you're paying for your test, you have a certain amount of time to send those scores out, and you only have so many scores that you can send under that account. And then once you go over that count, then you have to pay per test. So per school rather. So that may be, let's say, $16 per school. Now, if you are a student that is eligible for a fee waiver to take your test, meaning that there's certain criteria that you have to meet to get that fee waiver. Some of the criteria means that your school is a school that has the National School Lunch Program, that you are part of a TRIO program, like an Upward Bound program, that you have to meet a certain income requirement to be in, that your income is a certain amount. And there are 2 or 3 other factors that will make you eligible to get that fee waiver. That fee waiver will allow you to take with the SAT currently 2 tests, and I believe now with the ACT 4 tests, that you can take those without any fee at all. And if you use a fee waiver to take the test, then you have as much time as you want to send your scores out, and you also can send your scores to as many schools as you want to if you use that fee waiver. So don't listen to what other people are saying about the timelines that you have or have not. Those timelines are based on 1, if you pay for the test yourself, or 2, if you had a fee waiver, if you're able to have more time to send it out. And listen, I'm whispering because I wanted to give you guys an additional college underdogs tips for people who are using their waivers for testing. You also get waivers for your application fees if you use the waiver for testing. That can save you a ton of money and allow you to be able to apply to some more schools. All right. So find out from your counselor at your school if you're eligible for a fee waiver. I don't know why I'm whispering, but it just sounds like something that needs to be whispered. All right. So make sure you guys take advantage of the fee waiver if you're eligible for it and the benefits that go with that. All right. All right. So back to the video. So typically what I tell my students is don't put colleges on your list when you're applying for the SAT or the ACT. Wait until you get your scores back. See if it's something that you are comfortable sending. You also want to find out from that particular school, what is the average SAT score range that they accepted in last year's class or the year before. And if your score is at the top of that range, then you should send it. So that's just kind of a rule of thumb. It's not a definite. So don't be talking about, Miss Mitchell, Miss Renee, you told me this and you told me that and I didn't get in. I'm just telling you it's a range. And of course, things change all the time. College application process is not an exact science. So hold off on sending those scores. And what I tell my kids with fee waivers, don't even send your scores at all. Ask your counselors not to even put them on your transcripts. For students at my school, we don't put them on our transcripts. We allow them to wait to see if the SAT score is something that they should send to that particular school. And if it is something that they should send, then they can just send it with their free sends through the College Board. Okay, so it's very important that you guys, again, do some research to see what their SAT score range is. See where you fall in that line before you just send your score. And you can also maybe have a conversation with your school counselor if you have a college and career counselor at your school. And sometimes you can call the college and just ask them, you know, should I send the score? Because it's not really official until you actually send it. All right, so that's all that I have right now as far as the test optional. When something else comes up, I'll do another video and give you guys an update. All right, so guys, make sure click the like button on this video because you know you liked it, and also subscribe so that you can stay in tune and stay engaged with what's going on at College Planning for Underdogs. And of course, you can get a free 15-minute consultation by clicking the link down in the description box, and we can have a conversation about your college plans, and maybe we can take it from there. So again, this is Nicole Renee, your host, and thank you for following College Planning for Underdogs.